Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Rivals.com National Day Signing Show Extravaganza. Obviously, it's been a great adventure for us so far today. Talking to you about some of the big storylines, the surprises, all the good stuff, and let's just get right into it with teams that have done well and not so surprising in many cases. But let's start by talking about Georgia. They get commitment in Tyler Simmons. We talked about Mikhail Carter earlier, McCole Hardman as well. But just recapping, Woody, we'll start with you. Why don't you just talk about the impact of those 4- and 5-star guys that Georgia was able to get so far?
Well, what a start to the day for the Bulldogs. You go out, you get McCole Hardman, a 5-star, the guy you wanted. You had to get the number 11 player in the country. You follow that up with Mikhail Carter, who was really a late addition to their board. They didn't look like they were getting him. And then Tyler Simmons, who's a 3-star. Everyone says, what's the big deal? A 3-star wide receiver. Alabama was calling Tyler Simmons until the moment he announced at his school. His dad actually was on. We were talking to his dad on the phone. His dad had to hang up to talk to Alabama because they were trying to get him. So that's a major recruiting victory. Whether or not he's a big guy in the rankings, it's still a win for them, and it's been a successful day. Now Derrick Brown, the big name, still on the board.
Yeah, and we'll get to him in a second. But Rob, just talk a little bit about maybe from the point of view of Kirby Smart coming in as a new head coach. Still had business to take care of at Alabama. Jumps right into recruiting. I mean, what can you say about the success that he's had?
As good as he's done today, I think that's maybe the smaller point and the microcosm of what's really important here, and that's going forward. I think what he's done today and what he's done in this cycle makes a statement about what he's capable of doing at Georgia on the recruiting trail going forward. When you give this guy an entire recruiting cycle, then all of a sudden you start thinking about, can he compete for a top class? I mean, if this is what he's done in a short time, it's going to be real interesting to see what he's capable of when he really gets to dig in there and recruit for a full cycle.
And so would a mini litmus test be the commitment of Derrick Brown? Should they get him? I mean, how confident should Georgia fans be with their chances with him?
Boy, I don't know. Our Georgia site, UGAsports.com, they across the board think he's going. I don't have a good read. I still think it's Auburn. Alabama's they're confident. We're hearing from Andrew Bowen saying, "Hey, Alabama thinks they're getting him." So if they pull him off, that's huge.
Maybe I'll play for all three of them.
That would be great.
Split time, right? Yeah.
Just an all-SEC commitment for Derrick there. All right, well let's move forward to another team that we had kind of pegged earlier to be a team that was going to be a force, and that's FSU. We just talked about Dontavius Jackson and Jawan Williams committing not too long ago. They also get Brian Burns, Carlos Becker. Just talk about the class that FSU's been able to put together so far.
They've really done well today, too, and I don't think they're done as the thing. They've definitely got some other guys still on the board that they'll get. Becker's an interesting player because, he was one that was kind of up and down this season. We had the chance to see him at the Under Armour All-American game, and I felt like he held his own. He plays a lot of different positions. He'll play safety at Florida State, and, I think that's a real good addition that might get overlooked because, like you said, he's not a top 250 player, but, in the grand scheme of things, I think he can develop into being something really important for the Seminoles.
Don't tell him he's a safety. He identifies as a corner.
Yeah, you know who else identifies as a corner? Jamel Cook, who Florida State lost to USC today.
Well, listen, I've never met a defensive back that says that they're a safety more so than a corner.
That's true.
They're few and far between. I mean, is there a splash pickup for FSU yet to come that you might forecast as a guy? Maybe not that you have inside information on, but a guy like if you were to predict a guy, maybe.
What's real interesting is everybody's watching the Congo kid, the junior college, the 5-star kid. He's interesting because Florida State's real confident there. So is USC. He's kind of like the situation we were just discussing, where he might be playing for 9
so is Ole Miss.
But I think they're going to get him for no other reason than just from things that I've been hearing. But you hear it from every school that they've got him. So we'll see what happens. But it'll be a real nice pickup if they can surprise and steal him.
So moving on to another team in the SEC, big surprise. The SEC team's doing well so far, but yeah. Ole Miss again. Just another strong recruiting class. They had a lot of good commitments coming into National Signing Day, but then obviously a coup with A.J. Brown and then Deontay Anderson thereafter. Who wants to weigh in on just the job that they're doing today?
Well, it's like a 2013 redux for us here. I mean, they're not going to get the number 1 player in the country. It doesn't look like. Looks like Rashawn Gary's headed to Michigan. But I mean, geez. A.J. Brown, we turned heel on Mississippi State. We talked about it in an earlier video segment. And then they've got more names on the board, too. I mean, I think Jeffrey Simmons, yeah, they're probably going to push into the top 5. I think that's a safe bet, right?
And then every fan of every other SEC school is going to accuse them of cheating because that's what happens. And we'll get to watch that fall out again.
Yeah, boy. Well, we talked about that earlier in the week. The recruiting, the sanction story that came out, no impact whatsoever. I mean, that was not even on the radar of any of these recruits as we see the names that they've been getting this week.
Well, I mean, what do you just think? But and real quickly, we'll just talk about some of the guys that they've added coming into this. I mean, we're already talking about DeKalen Metcalf, Greg Little, Shea Patterson at quarterback. How high power? If this class specifically was the offense, in 2 or 3 years, how high powered do you consider Ole Miss's offense potentially?
Well, just the two wide receivers. I mean, those two guys complement each other so very well. Where you've got Metcalf, who's the big, tall guy that can go over the middle, maybe not the fastest guy in the world, and then you've got the explosive guy that can play all over the field, and A.J. Brown now. And all of a sudden, you've got these two guys lined up as your weapons on the outside, and they can do, between the two of them, they can do almost anything.
Not to mention the quarterback, Shea Patterson. I mean, you combine him with the left tackle and Greg Little, like you said. Those are the two cornerstones. If they get Kongbo, who they think they're going to get.
Who's going to play for everybody.
They got Jeffrey Simmons, though, is a guy at defensive end that fits that bill as well. You're talking about the vital positions, the most important, the highest value positions, quarterback, left tackle, pass rushing defensive end. They got it all. So 2 or 3 years, that's a national title type team, and that will be their expectations.
And quickly moving on to another big program that in past years may not have seen the same success that they're seeing today, but National Signing Day has been a very good day for Texas, and Charlie Strong specifically probably could have used a day like today for himself.
Boy, Charlie's sitting pretty right now. He's got to be smoking a cigar in his office with his feet kicked up.
His cowboy hat.
Right, they had like 8 commits or something just last week. They looked like they were ranked in the 50s or 60s. They move up into the 20s. Now they're into the top 25. They might get into the top 10 with all these guys that they have coming. I mean,
you won't convince me that this isn't at least partly a strategy on his part. He wanted to win National Signing Day. You want the headlines, you want the splash. So maybe if you've got some silent commits, you say, well, wait a second. Let's go ahead and we'll just announce all these commitments at once on National Signing Day when all the eyes of the world are on college football. And then all of a sudden, Texas is back. And that's the narrative. And now we're talking about them as, all the trouble that they've had on the field in the fall is kind of feels secondary for at least one day.
Well, recruiting and identifying talent has never been an issue for Charlie Strong, whether he was a defensive coordinator at Florida, at Louisville. I mean, they have several guys going to the draft. I think he just needs a little more time. Just give Charlie, Texas fans.
Give Chuck a chance.
Give him 2 more years, 2 more signing days like this. Forget about it. You're right back where you need to be. It was a big rebuilding job that he was tasked with.
Sure.
And speaking of big programs, Michigan, another team, as we said with Ole Miss, did a lot of their work prior to signing day. Michigan comes in just with a flurry of commitments in the 2 weeks leading up to signing day. And they're obviously, like we mentioned, one of the major players for Rashawn Gary, the #1 player in the country. Real quick, just touch on the job that Michigan's done, too, heading into today.
You can say what you want about those tactics that Jim Harbaugh employs, and you can whine about them and climbing trees and spending the night or whatever, but, it's not your paycheck that you're working for. It's Jim's, and he's working for it, and it's working. And maybe that's why people hate it so much, is that it does seem to be working. And there's going to be an all-time hatred for those techniques when Rashawn Gary picks Michigan later today. Boy, the Big Ten rival fans are not going to be happy with that one.
Well, here's the thing. We're going to see this next year.
Rick Flair is there.
You think it's bad now? Well, if what Michigan does works, you can guarantee that the other coaches are going to do it. We're going to see Nick Saban jumping on a trampoline
in a sleeping bag.
Yeah, and a mankini. I mean, whatever.
Hugh Freeze roasting marshmallows in somebody's backyard.
Listen, that would be good. That would be a nice tactic.
That's how they land Woody Womack.
Cook a bonfire. Give me some s'mores. Cookies and cream, though. Don't go with the milk chocolate.
Deal. All right. That's a recommendation that we'll talk about here shortly. But and before we leave Michigan, it's pretty well decided. We can't talk about Rashawn Gary enough, being that he's the #1 player in the country. I mean, is there a threat from another school to take him away from Michigan? Or?
Boy, I had a chance to talk to Rashawn just last week, one of the last interviews he did before it was all said and done. Might have been the last one. And I got the Michigan vibe. Clemson, sneaky suspicious. We saw them pull Trayvon Mullen today, rabbit out of the hat. If they could pull him, boy.
What a coup of a day for Clemson if that should happen.
But I think Michigan seems like it.
Michigan seems like the pick. But if it does happen and you steal 2 guys that you were not completely expected to steal on signing day, then all of a sudden the headline on this day changes.
So all eyes are going to be on him. Obviously, his commitment's still to come. We could talk all day long about the schools that have done particularly well, the schools that everybody is putting on as their headline, their marquee programs on National Signing Day. But let's talk about some schools maybe, on the peripheral that, don't have the boom, wow signing class, but guys that have some nice players that you guys individually like. And Rob, we'll start with you. Utah is a team that took some players out of your region.
Yeah, I really like the work that they've done in Florida. I mean, the quarterback that they got, Tyler Huntley, who was the quarterback at Hollandale this year, really could be a special player. He's a little bit inconsistent. He throws some interceptions, but he's got the build. He's got the mechanics. He can throw the ball a mile. He's got every uncoachable trait that you want in a quarterback. And if they can mold him there, he could become something that can transcend. He could become something that could be an all-conference player. I think he's got that kind of build. And then there are other guys. They've added Donovan Thompson, who they flipped from FIU, who was part of that Miami Central State Championship team in Florida that maybe had the best linebacking corps in the country. And played in the middle of that. And Damari Simpkins is also another guy from that Hollandale team with Tyler Huntley who played so well this year and is a little bit undersized, is maybe why he didn't get the attention, but he's as explosive as they come and I think can really make a difference in Utah's offense right away.
And Woody, obviously it wouldn't be a recruiting discussion on any level, be it podcast, video, any sort of media, if we didn't bring up UCF. Maybe just touch on a couple of guys that they picked up. And a guy that we're very familiar with, Aaron Dowdell, is a guy that we saw at Rivals 5-Star Challenge not too long ago.
Yeah, it's crazy to think UCF goes 0-12 last year. They bring in Scott Frost. He picks up Aaron Dowdell. This is a guy that was at the 5-Star Challenge, committed to Georgia, was dominating. We saw him go against Kendall Jones, probably the biggest body in the class in terms of raw physical size, and he dominated him. There was no question. Derrick Brown, we talked about earlier, he couldn't get past Dowdell as a pass blocker. Now, he didn't fit what Kirby Smart wanted. They kind of let him go late in the process. He didn't have any options. It comes down to UCF and Georgia Southern. He wanted to stay close to home. UCF wins that battle. So yeah, that's a guy that you can point to and say, hey, that's our marquee guy. Then they get Eric Mitchell from your neck of the woods.
Yeah,
another one of those
former
guys.
Florida commit.
Right, he was committed to Florida. So you're talking about talent. They're picking it up. They're rebuilding the program there. It's my alma mater. Why not give him a shout out?
Plus Dowdell is like a really fun name to say.
Plus, I love Dowdell. Great kid.
Even better person. Right?
Yeah, even better person.
Right. Anyway, so as you may or may not know, as presumably about 3,500 of you probably know, these guys are the co-hosts of the Commitment Issues podcast, housed right here on Rivals.com among other media, audio outlets. You can catch us anywhere. Subscribe to us on iTunes, of course. Leave a good review. And those 3,500 all wait at least 35 minutes every week or more to get to the rants and recommendations. By far the most popular segment. So real quickly, who wants to do the rant and who wants to do the recommendation?
I'll start. I've got a mini rant here. I'm not really an angry person, so my rants aren't as strong as Woody sometimes. But I think, and we kind of alluded to this a second ago, we need to get out of the habit of good player, better person. Because, the truth is, I cover recruiting. None of us know these kids as people. We just assume because he's nice to the reporters that he's a good person. That seems dangerous and maybe a little bit irresponsible to me. And maybe down the road you look really silly for saying that. And that's not saying that these kids are bad kids. Most of them are nice. But to pretend that you know these people on a personal level, to say, great player, even better person, is just, it just seems like a thing to say. It doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, a lot of people think you're a good person.
Yeah,
exactly.
Little do they know. Yeah, I agree.
Good reporter, even worse person.
Yeah. I agree with Rob on that one. It's tough. That was when I covered professional sports as well. You never know what's going to happen. These guys are at an arm's length. I like a lot of the kids I cover. We've had good relationships with them. We joke around with them, call them nicknames and everything like that, and joke back and forth. But really, you don't know. So it's tough to say. Better person.
Well, quick recommendation from you.
Boy, I've been walking around the office today. A lot of compliments from me on my attire here.
Yeah.
Guess what? I bought this entire outfit at Burlington Coat Factory. We're talking a $7 tie and pocket square.
Actually, what the camera doesn't show, the tie actually goes underneath and back up through the pocket.
This is a Calvin Klein shirt. That was $8.
My clothes feel cheaper just by sitting next to that.
Guess what?
No problem. You're bringing my property value down.
If Joseph Abboud and Calvin Klein make you feel cheap, I don't know. What can make you feel
the high life in Miami, Florida.
I can hear the sponsorship dollars ringing in anytime here from Burlington Coat Factory. Okay, so real quick as we wrap things up, talking a little bit about commitments that we're watching going forward. 4-star defensive back Christian Fulton, 5-star defensive back Jack Jones, obviously Rashawn Gary, 5-star linebacker Mike Juarez. And real quick before we leave, I guess Juarez is the kind of guy that we've talked about earlier as keeping our eye on specifically. Do we still think Alabama lean?
Oh, boy, we don't know.
He's interesting. Getting him off the West Coast is going to be tough. I think that I will stick with what I said earlier, that somebody at Alabama thinks that they have him. Mm-hmm. I feel comfortable saying. Now, I don't know if for sure that's going to happen because a lot of coaches have everybody until they don't. So,
well, guess what? We're SEC homers here.
Big time SEC homers.
We got to, Rob being from New York and me being from Oregon. We love the SEC. But I think definitely it's Alabama. That's what I'm sticking with. And if it doesn't work out that way, you can call me a homer on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah, and also curse when you do it. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, yeah. No sense in that. All right, so obviously keep up on Rivals.com for all those commitments and so much more. Hope you guys are enjoying lunch and the rest of National Signing Day.